on and introduce themselves to everybody while we're waiting for a few more. So, Richard, I asked you earlier at the last meeting, but since you're relatively new to the commission, maybe if you'd introduce yourself again real quickly.
Sure. So my name is Richard Gibson. I'm a state employee. I am the Chief of Fraud Investigations with the Maryland Insurance Administration. Prior to that, I oversaw background investigations with the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services. Prior to that, I was a deputy police chief, and I retired at the rank of major with the Baltimore Police Department. I Navy vet, disabled Navy vet, and I have a master's degree from Hopkins, and I am an adjunct professor for ethics and criminal justice classes, and I'm happy to be here.
Well, welcome. And you did a great job early this morning. You're very valuable. I really appreciate it. And
could we see everybody? And I don't know why what's on the screen is on the screen, but I'm unable to see.
Yeah, we can take it off for a minute. Ainsley can drop off the text for a minute. We'll come back to the text. But if you can change your screen so you can see everybody. But anyway, I was about to ask the representative for Delegate Embry, I think is on, or maybe it's Delegate I can't see.
Just me. Add the delegate. Hi.
Oh, there you are.
Oh.
Okay, great. Thank you. Welcome. And I'm trying to look through the list. Charlestine Fairley, could you introduce yourself, please? I'm just going by names that I'm not absolutely familiar with. Go ahead. Charlestine, you're on mute. Okay, she might have gone away from her desk. Oh, there she is.
Oh, I'm Charlestine Fairley. I apologize. I got stuck in traffic, didn't get here at the very beginning. I don't know if you need more of an introduction.
Just your title or whatever. Okay, well, anybody else who wants to introduce himself who hasn't been on very much? I mean, Ramika, you were on this morning, but you might want to reintroduce yourself also.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I have, but I've been to these sessions quite a few times, but I can do brief intro. Ramika Robinson, served 14 and a half years at the Maryland Correctional Institution for Women. Post-release, joined the main campus in 2017 to continue my education, started working for the GPEP program. And I am now the Director of Continuing Education Professional Advancement for GPEP, which is the acronym for Gaucho Prison Education Partnership. And I just received my degree this past Friday. So looking forward to next steps, and thank you for having me here and sharing the space.
Great. Okay. Andrea, you want to take over? And
sure. Congratulations, Ramika.
Yes.
Thank you.
So I think our meeting for today is to review what's going into the report. I think that's the main objective, right? There was no agenda sent out except for the draft, which I see is now on the screen, which looks a little different from what was sent to the group, but maybe there were some edits that were made.
Yeah, just Diana on the career thing asked what the general direction was. Just to remind everybody, we're putting together the interim report, which is due in June. We have 3 work groups. Andrea heads the higher ed group. We had the career tech this morning with Diana Bailey, and the ABE/GED special ed group has 2 or 3 different chairs, including Judith Lichtenberg and Ainsley and I. And we had those meetings, and we've edited based on all the participants. And the report that the higher ed folks put together, it was a little longer, like each one of the groups put a bit. So we're trying to summarize in this report what the longer piece is. We're going to put in a full attachment for ABE/GED, career tech, and higher ed. And attach that to the report if anybody wants more detail, but the report itself, I wanted to keep a little briefer. So I want to go over these items, these issue items today, edit them, remarks, whatever you want to do. And then we're going to put this together, and next week we'll give it to the commission to look at for its approval or whatever discussion we have to do, which we will then turn into a report to the governor, to the speaker, to the president, Speaker of the House, the president of the Senate. And that's where we're going. Okay, I hope that makes sense to everybody. Okay.
Okay. Do you want to expand the document so we can go through each section to see if anyone has feedback?
Ainsley, I don't know if you can make it. I can read it, okay, but maybe you can't read
can't
it
see
because
it.
you have a problem with your screen. So maybe if she could just put the document up and meantime take our.
That's better.
Okay,
Better.
Oh,
You can
actually,
also-
or if you
You
pin
can
it.
also do it yourself too. Down at the bottom right-hand corner of the document, there's a little zoom feature.
Okay.
You can zoom yourself.
Uh-huh. Never saw that before.
Learn something every day. Okay, good. Go forward. Do you want to lead the discussion on one issue at a time, and then we'll make remarks on it? Just people read it and make sure if they have comments and do we agree with it. We did some editing to all the other reports as we went through the issues. Anybody disagree with what is there or wants to add something or edit something? So I guess the core issue is here that we have Pell Grants and that's it. And we don't have any other access beyond that right now. But there are possible areas where we can get funding. And so we're trying to open up that discussion here for the report. Is that correct, Andrea?
Yeah, I mean, this talks about the state aid, the tuition, but also operational costs, which we've talked about in these meetings. So it taps into both of those. Those are two issues under the funding.
Okay.
Delegate Embry has her hand up.
Thank you. When it says required, is that state law? I just wonder if we should make that clear where the requirement comes from. That colleges, it says colleges are required to cover the cost of tuition after Pell Grants are awarded.
Because after Pell doesn't cover everything. So if they want to have a program, they gotta.
Oh, I see. So they're not. So the required just means that it's not required in the sense of a legal obligation. It just means there's no other way.
There's no other way to fund it. Correct.
So
Yeah.
that may want to.
And through the Department of Ed, for everyone receiving Pell funds, we're not allowed to charge incarcerated students. Like there's actually language in the U.S. Department of Ed's in terms of them awarding us or allowing us to award Pell. We have to figure out the additional cost. We can't charge the students or their families. So I think that's why that language of required is in there.
Yeah.
You might say instead, like, this is a financial burden that colleges must fund via philanthropic grants, and then.
It might just be that colleges must cover, or colleges cover the cost of tuition after Pell Grants are
Awarded.
awarded.
Okay, yeah.
As Pell Grant does not cover the full cost, just colleges, instead of must, just say colleges cover the cost of tuition.
Okay.
Tuition and fees,
Mhm.
not just tuition, it's tuition, fees, administrative cost, staffing, faculty. A lot more than just tuition.
And then you could take out the next two sentences probably, right?
Well,
Yes,
I mean, so they've got to come up with the money somewhere. So suggesting where,
Yeah. College
I think it's important to state that this is a financial burden.
burden that colleges must fund via philanthropic grants. Or this, in addition to operational costs, is a financial burden. I'm not sure line by line editing is best done with 15 people, though.
No, but we actually got through the other ones within an hour, so we can do it, as long as you don't get too picky.
Hey, Steve and Andrea, can we look at I guess the title and the funding? Can we include operational costs in that too, or operational problems in that statement too? Because the first statement is just focus on one specific thing, students not being able. But I think that paragraph includes two separate things. So can we find a way to add that in that first line?
Yeah. Hmm.
May I ask a question? I recognize that I don't know a lot about your report, and so I'm listening. Could you tell me what the Pell Grant covers?
Sure. So Pell Grants cover for an individual student. They're able to cover tuition, fees, and they could cover books and academic supplies, but tuition is usually higher than all of those things. So a student might get a few $1,000s towards their tuition, and then there's this difference where it doesn't cover all the tuition, and it definitely doesn't cover books at most institutions, especially four-year institutions.
Okay, well, thank you. Let me just say, because I came in so that you understand, I have over 50 years of experience in higher education administration. And on my 80th birthday, I switched to private nonprofit. And so so to help you understand why I might ask some questions, and it's my ignorance because I haven't been on the ground floor with you, but it seems somewhat odd. When you talk about the funding, you're talking about funding a program, or are you talking about funding the students' attendance at the college?
The money is per student, and it's given from the Department of Education to the college for each individual student. They get an award.
Yeah, so the money that is the federal Pell Grant funding that was given back to incarcerated individuals only covers a certain amount of things like tuition, fees, certain costs. The issue is that very often, if not all, pretty much 100% of the time, tuition itself costs more than what the federal allotment is for Pell Grant funding for an incarcerated individual. So often when you hear incarcerated individuals go to college for free, that is not necessarily, they might get the degree for free, but it's not free to the college. The college still has to make up the cost of whatever they have to do to manage that program and run that program. So there's an allotment per year that each person gets to cover costs to attend that college, but then that only goes to a specific funding amount. And then everything else, the college then has to get either donated funds, philanthropy, grants, something else to be able to cover those costs to do the program behind the fence in prisons.
Yeah, there are no state funds.
Yes, there are no. It's not so much blocked as they just don't. The way that it's written in Comar is that it is written that it does not specifically say that they can access it, but it does not specifically say that they can't access it. So because of the loophole, and it does not specifically say that incarcerated individuals have the ability to access state post-secondary funding, so state aid for post-secondary, they cannot access it. So this is something that I've been working with Secretary Rye and Dr. Emily Dow to see if there's a way that we can do legislation to actually either put in a supplemental grant that are only for incarcerated individuals that they can access state funding, right? Per year. So maybe we have $1 million per year and that goes towards, and they have to apply for it, right? However that might be. Or we look into changing the language in the state aid to add in that if you are an incarcerated individual, you can also access this funding. We just have not figured out which is the best way to go, both politically and legislatively, and the best way to do it with constituents and all that good stuff. You know how that is.
I know the other question I would have. So an incarcerated student is treated differently than a regular student coming in, because normally you have a financial aid packet automatically if you're eligible for the Pell Grant. That makes you eligible for other funds to match the Pell Grant so that it covers the cost of your being at the institution. Now that's generally across the board, so that, and what I'm hearing is all that the incarcerated student gets is the Pell Grant. But if a student is legitimately, that's not a good word to use, if a student is eligible to be accepted at an institution, it seems to me that that institution financial aid packet would be the same for the incarcerated student, with the exception of room and board. It should be less, because if a student, regular student would need more, because they would need the room and board and other things. Incarcerated student does not need that. So there should be enough funds in the individual packet to take care of the enrollment and the study and all the other things. That's just
Okay.
what I'm saying based on my experience. There may be a lot of other things that you know that I don't know, or that takes, but in general, across the board, this is the way each student gets a financial aid packet according to the student's needs.
Perhaps we could, in the extended remarks, say something like that.
Well, not quite, Steve, because it is a little different for incarcerated, because it is a different, it is set up very differently, because it is the federally fund, it is the prison education program, right? It's a PEP. It is a separate program in which they are applying to, that goes through a different approval path and all. So they don't quite have the same access, and the college directors can explain this a little bit more, but it's not quite the same. Yes, they don't have to do room and board. There's certain fees they don't have to do, but there's also other overhead costs that the colleges have to pay for that you would not normally have to pay for.
Well, that could be explained. That could be explained.
It should be less. It should be less, but
yeah,
it should be. Again, I apologize.
It's a little different with these programs.
If a student is eligible for a Pell Grant, that student is eligible for other things. And so the issue seems to me that the incarcerated student is really being treated differently, because most of the financial aid packets more or less follow the student, the one that are not incarcerated as well. You take your packet and your packet, and that's federal.
Mhm.
The whole packet is federal.
Yeah. And Andrea, I don't know if this might be something, Miss Farrelly, we can always, do a separate conversation with you to talk to you about how prison education programs were set up when it was approved back 2 years ago, and kind of how it differs from like a regular on-campus student, and how that's affected differently. But I want to make sure, Steve, we can get through this.
Okay, I
gonna-
recognize that I've not been here, but
Let me take an executive privilege here. I would like Andrea and Danielle and Charlestine to craft a paragraph that covers this in the addendum. Because you have it's a little longer than the stuff we put here. Just explain that how the Pell Grant is different for an incarcerated person than for the average person, and explain that, so that when this issue comes up, for the next iteration, which we're going to make recommendations, we might end up making a recommendation that the state look at this. The state is not going to come up with any more money in this budget atmosphere, and so we can't ask for that. So the reason we're going for these other things is because that money's there already. So we're asking for access for incarcerated students. We're not going to go and recommend. I don't think the commission will want to do that. Recommend we put $1 million aside extra for incarcerated students, because it ain't going to fly with the legislature, right, Delegate?
Well, that's something that MHEC's looking at separately.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
I
but-
would, and I'm sorry I'm off camera. I've had to travel to my next event, but I would strongly recommend, that we recommend changing COMAR so that it's accessible versus making the money asked. But I just want to make sure
where I'm at.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's I told Secretary Rye that a week or two ago. I'm like, with the budget deficits and stuff, I think that's where we need to move towards. But if you want to put that in as a something just to say that in here, Steve, that will help us changing COMAR. Cause that's we're already going to do that.
So Andrea and Danielle and Charlestine, would you want to work on that? Get that statement in. I would like to get something the next day or two, because we're going to, let's say before we have our commission meeting, because when we do if the commission approves what we're putting in here, then we're going to attach an addendum, and I'd like to have it in the addendum that for higher ed. Okay, so an extra paragraph or two, whatever it would take in this section under funding. If you guys could put that together, that would be terrific. Okay. So that way we can get on with the next issue with the technology. But Charlie, I really appreciate your comments, because you've crystallized the issue much more. And so thank you.
Dr. Starr, this is Christian again. I had a follow-up question to something you mentioned. Namely, just that it's something I was wondering about this morning, just with our kind of work product, et cetera. Given the budget situation, right, are we kind of producing, let's see, maybe I'm trying to answer this right. Are we producing the kind of model gold standard, right, prison education that we think would be wonderful? Or is it, which I think we're going direction, realistically within our financial means, what we think they are, we're proposing solutions that we think are realistically will be adopted, or we kind of proposing like the gold standard?
I don't know if we're going for a gold standard, but we've raised all these issues for 3 different areas. And these are the higher tech issues, higher ed issues. And so we would like to bring these to the attention of the governor and whatever we come up with, and to the president of the Senate and the Speaker of the House for their consideration. Some of them may include, reference to COMAR, for example, to change something, or some may, open up some of these other funding areas so that incarcerated individuals are eligible. We're not coming up with a set of standards for prison education per se. We will have a section we're going to do probably after we get through the interim report. We're going to look at models of and maybe some standards for prison education in general, but we're not going there yet for a set of gold standards, let's say.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you for your comment. You want to go on to technology? Okay.
Yes.
Any suggestions there for change or editing?
So we might want to say some universities do not have access because some do have access. That very first sentence, incarcerated college students do not have access to college. We actually have 3 of our 5 colleges do have access to learning management system. We are systematically going through and getting everybody.
I guess I have a question about what you mean by a learning management system. So at JCI, they don't directly access OneDrive, for example. They put something up on the server and then the administrators transfer it. And so it's always going through indirectly.
That's just University of Baltimore, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah. So like, for instance, Bowie State University does have a learning management system. So, they were our first to pilot it and to get it up and running. So we are going
Does
to.
that mean that the students have access to the internet then? Or
They have that through the Origin platform, which is a corrections approved platform that has a learning management system that they will have access to anything. So if the college has Canvas, the teachers can upload, download all they have their own proprietary learning management system in which you can upload and download from any other learning management system onto. So if you're a teacher on campus at UB and you use Canvas, for example, you can download all of your content from Canvas to the learning management system on Origin's platform. They have access to be able to do their virtual classes on there. They have access to do virtual mentoring, tutoring, financial aid. They can do their financial aid, the FAFSA, like reentry services. They were our first to pilot it through Bowie. UB will be the University of Baltimore will be next since we're already have it at JCI.
Will they be able to do that 24/7 or only when they go into the school?
That's currently only in the school because in the housing units, it's not, we don't have, can you give me $15 million? And I'll set it up in the housing.
Well, then I would add something. Some incarcerated college students do not have 24/7 access to the,
Or they only have access while in school. And
yeah, so I would put something on that about that because that's a real limitation.
So right now they have there's a completely different vendor in the housing units.
Okay.
that's for the tablets, right?
Yes.
And the tablets don't have any of the educational material on them?
On the housing units?
Yeah.
On the housing units.
But not the college materials.
They don't have any education at all on the housing units, except for some very basic literacy stuff.
Okay.
But in the education, the laptops that they have is through the same vendor that, like, for instance, labor has the tablets. It's the same vendor that for the learning management system.
So in school they can do that, but not in the housing unit.
But yeah, but on the housing units, they have to, we're getting funding,
So can they use the tablets? Let's say they have a paper and they know what the assignment is and they remember the assignment. Could they work on that on the tablets and then transfer it to the?
There's no word processing or anything on those tablets.
Okay.
Has to be on a laptop.
Right. I mean, if they put something like some sort of word pad or something on there, but then that's a security issue because then we would not be able to view that before it got sent. Like, so there's a lot of, especially because it's a different vendor. If it was the same vendor, different story, because they man it 24/7. So
That issue of vendors is discussed elsewhere.
correct.
So we have a real problem with the vendor situation and the restrictions of contracts given out. Okay.
But one more thing to mention under this paragraph, I don't know if it was clear, is that what Danielle is describing is something that public safety is funding for about 2 years. And after that, the colleges have to pay the cost of using the learning management system.
Right.
So that's why this issue is on here. Not every college has this yet. And then at some point in time, the colleges have to pay the cost to that, which is tied into the funding.
Yeah.
So, for example, a lot of us, or some of us, I'll just talk for University of Baltimore, we don't charge incarcerated students fees, which reduces their tuition cost. But if we have to pay for a learning management system, we might want to consider charging fees for that, because perhaps we can get some state tuition aid to cover tuition fees, and then, right, more access to state aid would allow us to cover some of those kind of costs that the students, that's connected to the educational piece.
Good. Okay. These are all good suggestions. They're coming. This is good. Okay. Space.
Ainsley, can you scroll back? I just wanted to read the last sentence of that last one. Okay.
Could we also be mindful of the messages that are in the in-call message box, because there's some really great ads. I know Karen, Riley, and Elizabeth have added to this, just to make sure that everyone's voice is captured in some way. They're contributing, but not verbally. It's in written form, so I didn't want to miss that.
Yeah, are we capturing of these comments that are after we're off the Zoom? Are we capturing?
Yeah, so Riley, that is for regular federal Pell Grants, for like if you're a regular on-campus student. So like incarcerated, there's some different rules for the Pell Grants for incarcerated individuals. That is a little different from that of, yes, it is only for their, either it's got to be a certificate, AA, or bachelor degree, that for the use for the incarcerated students Pell Grant funding for them for a PEP program. But the financial need issue, it's if they're incarcerated, they get that funding. So the financial need is not an issue. And yes, of course, they still do have to have the high school diploma and GED.
Both Delegate Embry and Karen brought up the wording of incarcerated students are often blocked. Does anybody have any recommendations of how?
Yeah, I wouldn't say blocked. I would say are just ineligible or unable, maybe ineligible, because right now they're ineligible because it doesn't say they can, right? So that might be the better way to say it.
Okay.
I just also wanted to point out that in the caption above, blocked is also in there. So in the main paragraph, but also in that caption. So just to keep it consistent. Thank you. Thank you for addressing that. And thank you, Ramika, for calling attention to the chat.
Okay.
Good catch there, Karen. Thanks.
By the way, this is going to continue to be a work in progress. Even after we submit this thing, it's going to be what we start up with to go up for our longer report, which is due at the end of November. So space, the new frontier for us.
Anyone have feedback or comments on space on this paragraph?
No, but Andrea, I think one of the other things that we might want to point out with funding wise is that no matter what, it is free to the incarcerated student, right? You can't charge them for college. So even though the Pell Grant doesn't cover all the tuition, the full tuition and fees and all that kind of stuff, that can still not be put onto the incarcerated student, right? So then in that is why we say then the college has to pick up that difference of that cost, because we can't charge them a loan. We can't do anything like that, right? It is basically, it's whatever that difference is. They can't be charged. So maybe that's something that it would be good that they cannot be charged for the difference of what Pell does not cover.
Okay, we're capturing that.
Sorry, before I thought of this, I was just wanting to get that before I forgot.
Thank you.
Okay, good. All right.
Is everybody good with space?
Yeah, and in the addendum, we have some discussion of what's going on with trailers and things, right?
Programming scheme.
Is there also any consideration or thought around students that are of some status, like pre-release status, joining college campuses as a part of their? I'm sorry.
You said,
Is there conversation around students that are like pre-release, just
Pre-release.
attending college on the campuses, if that's a possibility as a part of like maybe pre-release efforts or a work assignment? If we're thinking about space and space being an issue, if you have students that are pre-release status that are going outside of the institution anyway, couldn't they just join the main campus?
So you mean like kind of like a work release type thing, like if they're to go and actually do it
Yeah.
on campus?
We had that for until 1994.
Yeah.
We had a large cohort going to
Mhm.
UNC by bus every morning and being picked up at the end of the day. In fact, there were so many going out that it became an issue when some people were against it, said, oh, they're out there committing crimes and all that. So they went one day and they arrested everybody who was off campus. They found that they were all in class. Nobody was committing crime, but the whole program got busted just because of complaints. So we do have precedent back to the 90s of college.
We have looked at that for like other, like say, training programs and things like that. The only issue that we have found when we have done surveys of the population is that when they get to that status, the pre-release status, and they're able to go out on work release, they're getting paid minimum wage or higher. And if they are going to college, they're not getting paid at all. So the majority of them say that no, they would not elect to do that unless they were getting as like you know what I mean? Like there's no, they would have to go and that would just be, and there would be no pay. They would rather go off and do work release and get paid to do it. We actually did that survey recently for a different programs that we were looking at doing that would be pre-release, where they would be released to go do it. The only ones that we've been successful with that for education is, for instance, our Vehicles for Change program down at Vehicles for Change from Dorsey Run, but they're getting paid, right? It's a paid internship program, so they're getting minimum wage. So that is the only reason why they're interested in doing that. So it would just be who would, we'd have to see, would that even be of interest? Would they be able to do that? Like, would we have enough people that would want to go? Then we'd have staffing issues, getting them there. Like, would we just give them, but there's logistical stuff there once we find out if there'd even be any interest at all to do it. And that would be more like your community colleges. I would think we would do that for. Not so much your your bachelor degree programs, because by that point they're usually, within 2 years, 3 years of release. But have thought about it.
Should we move on to incentives, since we have about 15 minutes left? And I think this is the paragraph that actually has not been formed yet. There's some ideas here, but I think this is the section that we need kind of the most help with.
Would it be helpful to say, for example, what these credits amount to? I mean, how many credits do you get for what, or is that too complicated to put in here?
There's a lot.
So I think that's why they listed the bill.
It depends on whether they are going. It also depends on whether they're going as a full-time student. For instance, if they're like Georgetown is a full-time actual job assignment, right? So they get actual diminution credits for going to class every day. Certain ones, if they're JRA eligible versus not. Everybody, no matter what program you're in, gets credits after you get your certificate, AA degree, or whatever. That's a one-time allotment. But the diminution credits, the good day credits, like for just going to class, that has to be your job assignment, right? So, and a lot of those are not. They're volunteer in the evening programs. So, which is why here this fall, we are going to be transitioning a lot of our college programs to full-time job assignments.
Really?
So yes. So that way there will actually be a college student job assignment that will have a pay attached to it. And if they are going, it's like a minimum of 3 hours a day, 15 hours a week, you will be considered full-time, and that will be your job assignment. So then you can either get 10 days a month or 20 days for JRA. You'll get the special project credits. You'll get the diminution credits for earning the degree. So then there's different things that we are incentivizing it now more. Now, if you still though want to work MCE during the day because you get paid more and still go to college part-time in the evening, then that's, that will be up to the student. But if they want to go, that's where they need to decide what's more important, like getting your college degree, even though you're getting paid more, or getting it before you get released, MCE during the day and having that be your job assignment because you're getting paid more, and going to classes in the evening and possibly not getting your degree before you get out, which we know, 89% of people who don't get their degree while they're in prison do not do it post-release. So, there's some good and bad, but we're also starting with a pay rate.
Danielle, we're gonna run out of time right now. You gotta. I thought we were gonna use, some of you guys were gonna write up more about this. And we'd have it for this, but I guess that didn't happen.
Yeah, I will take in, because a lot of this is a little bit incorrect, so I can take and write up more about with the incentives.
Well, there's also one word in here. People who are reading this who are not familiar with the system, the word credits, they might be confusing. When you're talking about college credits, diminution credits, so we got to be clear what
Yeah.
we're talking about. But
Or special project credit, like, yeah, I can go through and do all that.
well, we're going to need that really quick, and because we're going to need to put this in and have this for the commission meeting next week for this incentive thing. And I thought that was going to be written up by a couple of you, and then so I'm going to say, Danielle, I'm appointing you and to work with Andrea and everybody else who wants to join on this, and write up a section and get it so we have it. Does anybody else want to join with
Can I
that?
ask just another question? Go back to when you say the current law is unbalanced, is the same number of credits are awarded for those who complete either a certification, AA degree, or BABS. Why is it unbalanced? That implies that people should get more credits for one of those than the others,
So they get it for each one. Like,
Yeah.
it's not just you do one, that's all you get. Like, if they do a level 4 certificate, depending on what your conviction is, you can either get 40 or 60 credits. So you get 40 for that. You get your GD, you get another 40. You do an AA degree, you get another 40. If you do a BA degree, you get another 40. You get 40 or 60 for each one of those things.
All right.
Yeah, and is there something wrong with that?
What?
I said, is that a bad thing?
No, I'm not sure where the imbalance came from. I think that's why Steve said about us getting together and, really.
Yeah,
Is
and I
it-
think
is it
if
true
I
that-
could,
Oh, sorry.
I was just saying the imbalance is somebody who's in a bachelor's degree program takes them 6 or 7 years. They might get 40 credits at the end of that 6 years, where someone in a certificate program takes them 1 year and they get 40 credits.
I see.
Right. I think it's
Yeah.
just, we had conversations, I think, about, after a 1 year period of participation, credits perhaps could be awarded, because there's some students that are transferred in the middle of their bachelor's degree and they don't get anything.
Yeah. Well, yeah, if you could explain that a little more clearly, it's not.
Yeah, that won't happen because they already get credits for being in the program. That's those special project credits, the diminution credits. So they're like, if they're just in there for a year, they're already getting credits to be in there for that year. So they can't double up.
Okay.
These are just one time earning the actual.
We're in the
degree.
weeds. We're in the weeds, and I'm
Yeah, it's in the weeds.
So I want you, Danielle and Andrea, please, and I'd like to get that early next week, like Monday or something that's possible, because
Can't.
the later, it's something that you can agree on. It's a better thing on that, and then get it back to, you can send it to everybody, but give it to Ainsley and me for sure. Ainsley's going to put it in the document that we're going to give to the commission. Okay, this is a very complicated thing, and I've got more opinions, but I'll express them right now on this issue. So, okay. So, because we have a full stop here at 2:00. Some people have to get off, and I know I do. We have another 2:30 meeting.
Okay, so we'll finish that one up afterwards. Okay, so let's move on to reentry. There's a short paragraph here. If anyone had a chance to review and has any feedback on what's written, anything that should be added.
Professor Cantora, I have a question regarding what happens, and because I experienced this, I have to share. What happens if college programs at different facilities like collapse? What happens then? What type of provisions can be made then? Will the student be able to transfer to a program that still exists? Will he be able to pick up on this when he's released? What happens then?
Yeah, we've had conversations with Danielle about this, the college directors, and the idea would be to transfer them, correct me if I'm wrong, to another program that does exist if that were to happen. We talked about this when Warwick's program decided to close down, but they were able to, I think, teach everybody out.
Yeah.
Sometimes when this happens with colleges, they have to teach people out and then not accept any more students. Of course, they can just fold and leave, I guess.
Actually, a requirement of Pell Restoration is they have to do a teach out plan. So meaning that prior to them deciding to end the program, I think it's like within that a semester of or more, they have to do a teach out of how do we plan to get these people either through or transfer to another program or post release or whatever it might be. Now, we might not always be able to transfer someone because of conviction, the security level, that sort of thing, or they might have to go somewhere. You know, we're going to have them at so many places where we should be able to, right? But they might also have to go into a different program than what they were in. So it just would depend. But like Andrea said, there's going to be a teach out process. And that's actually in all the new MOUs that were required by the federal government, is the teach out process.
All right, are we okay on this particular thing then? On this particular item, we have one or two more here.
Yeah, I think this is just basically talking about the requirement for reentry score. I think this is clear.
Okay.
You want to get them to do it or
Yeah. All right, it's creative. This was the new one that was put together, right? So I'm not sure everybody saw this.
That's a new one, and I also reached out to the University System of Maryland to read it and add anything, and they wanted to add that last sentence that states they are seeking funding to support this.
Yep.
And hopefully in the future get some support from the state.
You might want to say Maryland would benefit rather than could benefit. If this is something we want. Also in the title, in the italicized sentence. Oh, you got it there. Okay. That's 2023. To collaborate. Expand.
So is everybody, this is good. I like this. But I don't have any suggestions for it since it is important. I mean, get out and you have, I mean, that's like getting out with your career tech thing, but you don't have any money for tools. You can't continue. Okay.
Are we good?
So
So we're good for now, except for the incentive one where we're gonna meet offline to kind of craft that.
Yeah.
And then the funding one, explaining the Pell Grants, so that would be an addendum or an attachment.
Yeah. So the original piece we kind of got this a little short here. So if you want, we'll add to that. So the addendum is going to probably be a little work in progress. We might have to have a few more people work on that, but we want to have the incentive put together here for the commission. I mean, we want to have the interim report put together for the commission next week on Thursday, when we all meet a week from today. So, and then the addendum we can work on a little bit more if we have to explain some of these things in a little more detail. Okay,
So Steve, we can probably have it to you by the end of the day on Tuesday, as long as Andrea can meet Monday or
okay,
Tuesday.
yep, that'll be good. And again, it's a work in progress. We're going to submit an interim report and we're going to come back to it after that and continue to work because we're going to come out, what we're going to do is do some more activities, some more research, talk to probation. There's all lists of things in this report. You can see future activities. And then we're going to come back and turn some of these issues into recommendations for the November report. So it's a work in progress and we'll come up with new stuff. We could edit this forever because all of us have good ideas and we want to make sure. So we'll just keep working on it. Okay. But we do have to get an interim report in. So. Okay.
So real quick,
Thanks, Steve.
Karen, I think you had in the chat that you wanted to be part of the incentive conversation. Was there anyone besides Karen, me, and Danielle? I mean,
Okay. So if you schedule that, let Ainsley and I know. We may join you with that, one or both of us, but yeah.
okay.
I think like I said to the other committee earlier today, because we're 2:00 now, you did a fantastic job on this, Andrea. And I really appreciate it because people are putting a lot of time on these things and it's so important. And so thank you all for your hard work and to be continued. Nothing is set in concrete. We're going to keep working on this and have a terrific thing to turn into the legislature for next year's session. And you're all to be commended, every one of you. Okay.
Yeah.
So some of us are going to be, everybody's invited to be on the call at 2:30, I think, pretty much everybody here. Some of us will be muted, and then at the end, you'll be able to open up for discussion.
Could you remind us of what the 2:30 meeting is?
We're going to, the data collection system used by DOL.
By
to collect
DOL.
data. Yeah, on enrollment, attendance, waiting lists, completions, et cetera. They're going to present on how that data is collected. Okay. Which has an effect on almost all three groups. Okay. All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Andrea,